Okay, so that's been a very interesting morning so far. And now we've got another couple of sessions before lunch. And the first one of those is around using technology to support the new models. And we're fortunate today to have Jackie and Dorothy, who are working within the NHS Highland and Clyde part of Glasgow and Clyde. And they are going to take us through the next session. Thank you.
So, thanks for having us here. And what we're going to be talking about is really, it's not something completely new. It's looking at finding new solutions to quite old problems and old challenges that we've had working across two different areas in Scotland. So we've looked at continuity of care earlier, continuity of carer, and this is also looking at continuity of carer, but it's also looking at the use of hubs and what a hub actually means now, not 5 years ago, not 10 years ago, but how a hub can function today so that the care is available around women within their own communities, within their own families, where their care makes sense to them, but also where that care can be linked into all the other services that make them part of the multidisciplinary team. So nothing new, there's Scotland. And Highland stretches from right to the bottom of that yellow bit right up to the top of the orange bit, covering a third of the land mass of Scotland. So 750 women a year become parents in Argyll and Bute, which is the yellow part at the bottom there, and they become families there and they live their life there, so they want to be able to access their care there. But how do we do that in a way that keeps us not isolated but linked into the wider team? We know that previously a lot of the services moved so that because the level of service that was available, the level of care that was available, a lot of care went from being a trickle to a flood down to being into the consultant units in Glasgow. How can we provide that care back within local areas, but differently, that makes sure that we are linked in to Paisley, to Glasgow, to the right services in a different way? So I'm going to hand over to Dorothy.
So we know that several CMUs feeding into a CLU will cause a bottleneck, and it can cause a bottleneck in triage, in daycare and early pregnancy when medical review is required and when medical review is not available in the local area. So technology can help this with Attend Anywhere and with BadgerNet. BadgerNet, Highland are getting hopefully in the summer, and once CTGs are uploaded to BadgerNet, it means that the medical person sitting in Paisley can review the CTG that's done in the local area. We also know that there's national work going on regarding triage levels with the primary midwife, the local hub and the CLU. So the challenge is providing care from the CLU. We know there's travel times and geography. The midwives and carers within the CLU have to know the geography and where all the women are situated. And it reminds me of a few years ago, sitting in Paisley, a woman came from Rothesay, and it was at the festive season, and we had a locum registrar who asked her to stay in overnight for observation, not taking into account the fact that it was Christmas and there's no ferries the next day. And when we reviewed her care, that poor woman who spent Christmas in the hospital, and she could have been at home with her family because the care could have been given locally. So it's all about knowing the situation. Also, we have to have mutual respect for each other's jobs and the strengths and difficulties within our jobs. CMU and rural midwives have difficulties that the CLU don't have and vice versa, and it's knowing each other's strengths. And best start with CMU midwives feeding into the CLU has really helped in building relationships between us all. For many, many years, Argyll, which is the area that feeds into Paisley, have worked with GGC guidelines. StaffNet is available to midwives in Argyll, which means that they can access all the guidelines and do work appropriately. Joint working and investigation of significant clinical incidences can be problematic when it's cross-board. Jackie has, on many occasions, had to travel down to the CLU to join the team to review SCIs. And once we bring attend anywhere into that, we can have up to 5 people phoning in to join that conference. So the challenges of providing care from the CMU are pretty much the same. Local midwives have to make decisions timeously. They have to be very on the ball and taking transfer times into account. Midwives from Argyll are now starting to filter in to Paisley, and they are travelling out with their comfort zone, and they have done very, very well with this. But I think a lot of the success of that has been with the receiving CLU. The midwives within labour wards have been very, very friendly and accepting and reassuring of their colleagues coming in, and that's been fed back to other midwives out in Argyll, which is really helping the ball rolling. So another thing that CMU midwives have to think when going into the CLU is, do I hand over care or do I stay to provide care? But they are the bosses. They know how long they've been at work, how long they've had to travel, and how long it is to take home. So they are the bosses of that.
So one of the reasons why we wanted to find a different way of doing things is that we all know the maternity survey that goes out. Well, we've been running a maternity survey in Argyll and Bute and across Highland now for the 3rd time. And it's based on the maternity survey, but it also has questions about remote and rural questions, so much more contextual. And the things that really came back clearly in that was, because we asked the question, was how important was continuity of consultant? And actually that scored really, really highly, that continuity of consultant was hugely important to women. But it was also that women were happy to travel when they needed to travel for appropriate care, but really not happy to travel for 5-minute appointment, 10-minute appointments, and the disruption that that causes in terms of rearranging things, childcare, and the cost of actually taking days off work. A 3-day round trip for a scan from some of the islands in the winter wasn't seen as value to the women. So we had to find a way to do things differently, and really it is about how Best Start has actually helped us to do that. And we're going to show a video at the end that actually says it a lot better than we do. Which you'll see at the end of it. So I'm going to hand over to you for the bit about...
Got off lightly here,
I
Jackie.
know.
So cross-border working between NHS Highland and the Clyde aspect of GGC started with Argyll midwives, well, principally from Bute and Dunoon, coming over to attend elective caesarean sections with their women. The midwives did find it very, very daunting coming, but as I said before, they got a very, very good reception. They weren't expected to come and provide care. It was all about relationship building, and it was about coming and seeing what happened in the CLU, being there with their women and seeing what happened in recovery. And that has gone very, very well. They've been quite limited in giving clinical care because Highland as yet don't have badger net, and the midwives don't know how to work the system as yet. So they wouldn't be able to document care, but that is gradually changing. We've got them emergency passwords for badger net, so the midwives give care as they are able and document appropriately. The women from Dunoon and Bute have given very, very positive feedback about this. They really love their midwives coming. And the fact it's an elective procedure means that the midwives can come over at an appointed time, stay with their women for a set amount of time, and be back home by the end of their shift, which is terrific. We developed a standard operating procedure with partnership in our local area and with Argyll. And it was very respect-based. It is actually quite fluffy, and it's all about caregivers respecting each other and respecting each other's strengths, and it's not a CLU versus CMU type of scenario. As I said before, the power remains with the visiting midwife, because she's the one that decides what she's able to do, what her competencies are, what she needs, and how long she's able to stay and how long she's fit to work if she's following a labourer in. Part of the SOP is that she knows who to contact and talk to. She knows who to discuss what she wants to learn from the experience, and she's given a mentor for that shift. There has been a wee bit of challenge, and we had a midwife phone Labour Suite and say, I'm the best start midwife and I'm coming in, and it caused a bit of alarm with whoever took the call, because she thought, I'm looking after that woman, you know, I've been allocated that woman, what's my role then? But we get that all sorted out, and it's good for these things to crop up, because you learn as you go along, and it was about communication with the Labour Suite. You know, actually, you still have your full core, so you're there to support that midwife. At Inverclyde Royal Hospital in Greenock, we have a CMU, and the women from Dunoon and Rothsay go there for their consultant-led care. Midwives from Bute and Dunoon have managed to come over, starting, what, about 3 or 4 months ago. They've managed to come over every week, 50% of the time, to come to the consultant clinic to be with their women. That has been really beneficial for both sets. It's been really beneficial for the women because of the continuity their midwives come. It's been beneficial for the consultant who gets the backstory of that woman, and it's also been beneficial for the midwife coming, who sees what's happening and what the procedures are, and it's a learning event for her as well. But it's been really good in that it's managed, paradoxically, to keep more women local, because the midwife at the clinic can say to the consultant, you know, when she's wanting something done, we can do that back in Rothsay, or we can do that back in Dunoon, and it saves the women another trip over, and it's been really, really beneficial. We would like also to roll out Attend Anywhere. As Jackie said, you'll see a video about it and how it works. We would like to put it into Greenock as well, to even save the women coming over when they don't need to. Sure, have you got the button?
I've got the button.
You've got the button.
Don't know which one we're on to, though. So what Dorothy's talked about is really about, if we're going to have relationship-based care, it's also about the relationship building between the midwives and between the midwives and the consultants, and being able to talk to each other. And that's really what it's been built on. But it's also about making sure that during this journey and during testing some of the changes, it's making sure that we're supporting midwives throughout that journey, and that they know where they are, and if they're going into different boards, how they're being supported and how they're working. And some of that work and what we've reflected on is now getting taken up by the Workforce and Education subgroup, to make sure that wherever you're working, when you're following your women, that it's quite clear that we're not looking at duplication and we're not looking at doing things twice. So in terms of where we see the future going with this has been very much, we've tested it and we've started working with this, but it's got so much potential. While we've looked at it from a remote and rural perspective, because having a Highland bias, it's just as difficult for a woman to get across Glasgow. It's just as difficult, if not, it can take longer to get across Edinburgh or Glasgow than it does to get actually from some of the areas that we're talking about. So this isn't a rural solution, it's a solution really for everybody. And as Dorothy said, moving to electronic records, being able to share what you can see, being able to share results, it just changes that whole idea that you have to travel for that care. It just means that the multidisciplinary team doesn't all have to be in the same building, wherever that building is, or wherever that virtual space is. And it's also got lots of things that you can build on in terms of self-monitoring, but it's about having confidence in the teams that you're working with and knowing what are the skills and what to expect from the group of people that you're working with. have a video that says it better.
Coming to hospital appointments can be difficult. There can be long waiting times, sitting around in waiting rooms. It's not very pleasant for anyone, and I think this avoids many of those issues.
I can just nip up 5-10 minutes away and be back again in 10 minutes. I can also take my children with me if I have to, if there's any problem, so it's been wonderful.
This could be used anywhere. We're finding it a really useful tool, both for in the maternity unit, linking with the clinics in Paisley, and also to link in from the islands.
You can do it on your iPad or your iPhone or an Android phone. It can work from all these systems, and the hope is in the future that women would actually be able to access this from their own home.
In my first pregnancy it was quite straightforward because I lived near the hospital that I was attending, but in my second pregnancy I lived in Oban and I had to travel. When I went for a scan or any of the consultancy appointments, the appointment would maybe last 10 minutes at maximum, and then back in the car and then back up again. It's about a 200-mile round trip to the hospitals.
Attend Anywhere is a virtual clinic whereby women that are pregnant can come in and be supported by their named midwife and also the consultant.
Up here in Oban we have scan clinics on a Wednesday, which is when we have our Attend Anywhere clinics, and that means that the women can have scans prior to their appointment with the consultant, and they're able to link in with them and make a plan of care based on the scan findings.
You don't need a lot of equipment. What you do need is a nice friendly environment.
So the Attend Anywhere clinic is incredibly straightforward. Once you've got your computer, your microphone, your video link, it all works through Google Chrome. You log on and the patients who are waiting for you appear in your virtual waiting room. You click on them and your patient appears in front of you. You have your conversation with your patient and then you end your call by clicking off. It's an incredibly simple, straightforward process.
I've needed input from the obstetrician in this pregnancy because I've had 2 previous caesarean sections with my other children, and I've opted for the same this time.
It is an ideal candidate for Attend Anywhere because this is her 3rd pregnancy. She's had 2 sections before. She does need consultant-led care because she's had 2 previous sections, but she doesn't particularly need to attend a clinic where we can see her face to face. I was worried that it would be like a phone call. When you make a phone call, the first thing you say to your patient is, "How are you?" And almost always people will say to you, "I'm fine, thank you." And over the phone, you can't tell whether they are actually fine or not. Whereas when you can actually see them, I think it's easier to assess whether people are well.
I didn't have any reservations about having a virtual appointment. I felt comfortable knowing what the setup was going to be. It was discussed with me fully beforehand, and being able to compare that to the situation I was in last time where I didn't know who I was going to see or how long I would be there, and I was tired after having made a journey. There was a huge difference, a huge benefit to me this time.
It means that instead of just having a clinic once a fortnight, which is then going to be very, very busy, you can see people every week. With obstetrics, things change very quickly, and sometimes waiting 2 weeks to see a consultant is not appropriate.
We can check blood results and scan results for the consultant, and we can screen share with them so that they can see those results.
First I was concerned about how women would feel having a video link appointment, but actually our population are all young women. They're used to Skype, they're used to FaceTime, and it's no different from that. So it's worked very well, and the feedback that we've had from women has been very, very positive so far.
The benefits to the board is cost savings. It also prevents the consultant travelling up on a weekly basis, and it prevents the women travelling down on a weekly basis, so it enhances the care.
I don't think this is only a rural thing. I think in urban areas it would work well too. We have a lot of ladies here who maybe don't have access to a car, use public transport, and I think this avoids many of those issues. It has worked really well.
Thanks very much. That was really interesting, and Attend Anywhere has huge potential, and you look as if you're doing some really excellent work, so thank you. We're getting a little bit behind, but we've got time for a couple of questions, if that's all right.
The first question that we've got here on Slido is, should we have national clinical guidelines to support cross-NHS board working?
I mean, I think what's made a difference to us in our situation has been actually having the same guidelines and to be able to work to them, because then everybody knows what everybody's working to. And but we also know that we've got in Highland, you're stretching across a lot of different boards that you're bordering onto, and the more common guidelines they are, then everybody knows what everybody's doing. It makes things a lot easier for us. It's made things a lot more straightforward.
I would agree. I just think that it would be quite challenging, because sometimes it can be difficult to get folk within the same health board to work to the same guidelines.
That would never happen in Glasgow and Clyde. I don't know what you mean. I mean, really?
Did I really say that?
No, you didn't. Strike that from the record. Okay, moving on.
And last question. If an incident happens in a cross-border situation, which board investigates?
It's a really important question. It is a really important question because, yes, we're looking at all the good things, but we also know that we want to learn from when things don't go the way we plan. This isn't new, Dorothy and I working together. This goes back 2004, we've been working together. What we try and do is always do reviews together, and we do joint reviews because there's joint learning in every situation. And it's not about who did what, who did that. It's about working together to find what can we learn from and what can be done differently.
Yeah, and if there is like an incident specific to a certain area, then that area takes the lead, and that's kind of how it works. But we do try to share the learning, and Highland have recently appointed a clinical risk midwife who's come down to the RAH to see how we do things, so that we can do things in with common ground.
Okay, thank you very much for that.